30 days ago I made a decision that felt a little bit reckless at the time. I decided to hand as much of my business operations as possible over to AI tools and document exactly what happened. Not the highlight reel version. The real version. What worked immediately, what failed badly, what surprised me, and what I would never go back to doing the old way. By day 10 I almost shut the whole experiment down. I am going to tell you exactly why, and exactly what changed. But let me start at the beginning, because the context matters for understanding the results. I run a small content and consulting operation. My week normally involves writing, client communication, research, content planning, project management, and a fair amount of administrative work that I have always handled manually. Not because I had to, but because I had never built a serious system around it. I was doing what most people do. Figuring things out as they came up, without a real workflow underneath any of it. The goal of the 30-day experiment was simple. Replace as much of the repetitive cognitive work as possible with AI tools, measure the impact honestly, and report back. I tracked my hours every day, which tasks I delegated to AI, which ones I kept doing manually, and how the quality of my work held up or changed throughout the process. Week 1 was genuinely exciting, and I want to be honest about that because a lot of what you read online about AI experiments skips the part where it is actually fun at first. I set up my full email system using ChatGPT templates within the first 2 days. I built my weekly planning prompt in Notion AI. I started running all my research through Perplexity instead of manually scanning articles and tabs. I connected Otter AI to all my calls so I stopped taking notes manually entirely. By the end of week 1 I had recovered somewhere between 90 minutes and 2 hours per day. That number is real and I tracked it carefully. Most of it came from email, meeting notes, and research compression. The tasks that used to be background noise in my day were getting handled in minutes instead of stretching across hours. I felt like I had figured something out that most people had not yet. That feeling lasted until day 10. Day 10 is when I sent a client a proposal that I had drafted with ChatGPT without reviewing it carefully enough. The document was technically correct. The structure was solid. But the tone was wrong for that specific client relationship, and more importantly it missed a nuance from a conversation we had had the previous week that I had not properly communicated to the AI as context. The client noticed. The feedback was polite but clear. It did not reflect what we had discussed. I spent the next 2 days rebuilding that proposal manually and thinking hard about where the experiment had gone wrong. The answer was not that AI had failed. The answer was that I had started to confuse speed with quality. I was sending AI outputs with less and less review because the outputs generally looked good. And for most tasks that is fine. But for anything where the relationship context matters, anything where the specific history between me and another person shapes what needs to be said and how, that review step is not optional. I almost stopped the experiment there. But instead I made a rule that I should have built in from day 1. Every AI output that touches a real relationship gets a full human review before it goes anywhere. Not a scan. A real read. That rule sounds obvious in retrospect. But there is something seductive about the speed of AI-generated work that makes it easy to skip the step that actually protects you. After I reinstated that rule, weeks 2 and 3 were the most productive consecutive stretch I have had in years. Not just because of the time I was saving, but because the freed up mental capacity was going somewhere useful. When you are not spending cognitive energy on things that can be systematized, you have more of yourself available for the things that cannot be. Better thinking on client strategy. More creative approaches to problems. More presence in conversations. That quality of attention shift is harder to measure than hours saved, but it is real and it matters. Let me walk you through the specific tools and what each one actually contributed over the full 30 days. ChatGPT handled the majority of my written communication drafts. I ran every significant email through it before sending. I used it for proposal structures, client update summaries, and any document where getting the format right quickly was more important than crafting every word from scratch. Time saved over 30 days. I estimated roughly 18 hours across email drafting alone. Notion AI became the engine of my weekly planning and project management. The brain dump organizer I use every Monday morning now takes about 8 minutes instead of 40. My project briefs get drafted in under 10 minutes from rough notes. My weekly reviews happen consistently on Fridays instead of being the first thing I skip when the week gets busy. Consistency is the hidden benefit here. When a tool makes a habit easier to keep than to skip, you actually keep it. Perplexity replaced Google and browser tab rabbit holes for essentially all of my research needs. If I need background on a company before a client call, I ask Perplexity. If I need to understand a regulatory change that affects a client's industry, I ask Perplexity. If I need to fact-check something before I put it in a document, I ask Perplexity. The quality of the research output is genuinely better than what I was producing manually because it synthesizes multiple sources rather than just returning the first result I click on. I estimate I saved somewhere between 15 and 20 hours of research time across the month. Otter AI handled all my meeting documentation. I stopped taking notes in meetings entirely from day 2 of the experiment. The transcripts are searchable. The AI summaries catch action items I would have missed or written down wrong. The ability to go back and find the exact moment in a call when a specific thing was said is something I use several times a week. There is also a secondary benefit I did not anticipate, which is that stopping note-taking made me a significantly better listener in meetings. That improvement in the quality of my actual participation in conversations is worth something that is hard to put a number on. Claude handled my long document work. Anytime I had a contract to review, a lengthy brief to analyze, or a research report to make sense of quickly, I pasted the full document into Claude and got a structured analysis in under a minute. The quality of that analysis was consistently high enough that it changed how I approached document review. I now read with Claude's analysis in hand rather than starting from scratch every time. By the end of day 30 the numbers were as follows. I estimated I had recovered between 40 and 50 hours of working time over the month compared to the previous month. My output volume went up meaningfully. The quality of the work that required real judgment was the same or better because I had more mental energy available for it. I had one significant miss, the proposal incident, which cost me roughly 3 hours to fix and some relationship capital that I had to earn back with extra attentiveness over the following week. The honest conclusion is this. I did not run my business for 30 days. It ran the parts of my business that should not require me in the first place. The administrative layer, the formatting layer, the information gathering layer, the first draft production layer. What I discovered is that when those layers are handled well and handled fast, the parts that do require you get significantly better. The mistake I made on day 10 was not using AI too much. It was using it without enough judgment about which specific tasks still required my full attention and which ones could genuinely run on autopilot. That distinction matters. Drawing it clearly is the real skill. Let me go deeper on something that took me longer than I expected to figure out, which is how to give AI tools enough context to produce outputs that actually fit your specific situation rather than a generic version of your situation. The default mistake people make is treating AI like a vending machine. You put in a request, you get an output, you move on. It works fine for simple tasks with no history or nuance. It fails for anything where the context matters. And in professional work, context almost always matters. Here is what I changed after the day 10 incident. For any task that involves an ongoing relationship, a specific client, a long-running project, or a recurring process in my business, I built what I call a context block. A short paragraph I paste at the beginning of any prompt that explains the relevant background. The client's communication style. The history of the project. The specific outcome I am trying to achieve in this interaction. The constraint I am working within. That context block takes about 2 minutes to write and it transforms the quality of the output. The AI is no longer guessing about what you need. You told it. I now keep a simple Notion page for each major client and each major ongoing project with a pre-written context block that I update monthly. When I need AI help with anything related to that client or project, I copy the context block, paste it at the top of my prompt, and then add the specific request. The outputs became dramatically more relevant and accurate the moment I started doing this. It is the single most underused technique I have seen in how people interact with AI tools, and it is also the simplest. The second thing that changed my results significantly in weeks 3 and 4 was building what I call a capture habit. Every time I noticed that a task took longer than it should, or that I was doing something for the third or fourth time that I had done before without a system, I stopped and spent 5 minutes building a prompt or a template for it. Not every time. Just the first time I noticed the pattern. Over the course of the month I built about 15 new templates that I now use regularly. Each one saves me between 5 and 20 minutes every time I use it. Compounded across a year, that collection of 15 templates is worth several hundred hours of my time. The third insight from the experiment is about energy, not time. Time is the metric most people use to evaluate productivity tools because it is easy to measure. But energy is actually more important. You can have 8 hours in a day and produce almost nothing if your cognitive energy is depleted by noon from handling low-value tasks that drain you disproportionately to their importance. What AI did for my energy over 30 days was more significant than what it did for my time. Removing the tasks that were cognitively taxing without being intellectually engaging, things like formatting documents, composing routine emails, taking notes, summarizing reports, freed up a kind of mental space I had not realized I was missing. The mornings got more creative. The afternoons got more focused. The end of day felt less depleted. That shift is not something you can put a clean number on, but it is probably the most important thing I took away from the month. If you are thinking about running a version of this experiment yourself, which I genuinely recommend, here is the single piece of advice I would give you. Start with the tasks that happen most often and require the least unique context. Email replies of a routine kind. Meeting notes. Research briefs. Weekly planning. Build the system around those first. Get comfortable with the review habit before you extend AI into anything that touches important relationships or high-stakes decisions. The compounding benefit arrives fast once the system is running. But the judgment layer in the middle is what keeps it from creating problems you then have to spend time cleaning up. 30 days in, I am not going back. But I am going in with both eyes open about what AI is good at and what still needs me. Subscribe for more honest, practical content on building with AI in 2026. I will see you in the next one.